It's a question I see a couple of times a week on social media. Is joining AOPA worth it? Well, let's find out in the hangar. Welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Dan Milliken.
And I'm Christy Wong. Today's episode brought to you by Gold Seal and iFly GPS.
Well, Christy, we have a really special episode today. You know, it's the question that, you know what the question is?
I know exactly what the question is because I see it at least twice a week, and that is AOPA worth it?
Well, to find out the answer to that, I think we need to go to the top.
We need to go straight to the top.
We need to go to the big man himself. So joining us today, President and CEO of AOPA, Mark Baker. Mark, thanks.
Thanks for having me on. And by the way, it is worth it.
It is worth it. So there
Okay,
we go,
well, there
the
you
end
go.
of the show. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. No. So Mark, first off, you're head of AOPA. Are you even a pilot?
Yeah, a long-time pilot. I started flying in 1977.
Okay, that's longer than I've been alive. That's good.
And I enjoy flying everything, everywhere, every day, anything I can fly. I love doing it. But AOPA, I joined it because my flight instructor in the 70s said, I'm not going to solo you until you sign up for AOPA.
Interesting. That's an interesting concept.
So they held you ransom.
Yeah.
We ran some, and I said, what's AOPA? Like everybody else does when you're first learning about it.
Well, I said, what's AOPA, but I guess we're not supposed to say that.
Well, I hear AOPA, AOPA, depends what part of the country you're from. But Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association has been around since 1939, and so we're in our 82nd year coming up. It is a truly amazing organization, what it does to protect our freedom to fly.
What is the mission of AOPA?
It really has started out in 1939. We still are aligned with that, which is about safety, making sure pilots can learn as much as possible to stay as safe as possible in aviation. And if you think about in the 1930s and what the orientation was, about a third of the general aviation planes were crashing every year. There's only 10,000 private airplanes in the 30s. And AOPA started out by looking at that. We looked at how do we work with the government to make sure we have access to the airspace, and advocacy in DC. It's a really important part of it. We also work on the economy. In those days was about how do we keep the cost of flying low and do that. And then how to get more people into flying is what it's all about.
So is AOPA just for aircraft owners?
You know, strangely enough, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, you actually had to be an aircraft owner to be a member.
Ooh,
and that changed in the late 50s, so you could be an aircraft owner or pilots association.
Gotcha, okay.
And now we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of members that are also just really interested in aviation as well.
Mark, what are the general aviation issues that you guys are focused on today?
Well, today, you know, we're always working on making sure that the airspace is accessible. One of the most recent laws that we got put into place was the Department of Defense and the FAA have to work together to turn on and turn off MOAs, military operations areas, because right now the country burns $100 million more fuel than it would need to if it could use access directly through some of these airspaces that we can now turn on and off like we do with the TFR, flight restriction area. So that's a really new process that we will see happen probably over the next 6 to 9 months. You know, we're really excited about getting that done. But what I really am working on that really excites me the most today is about getting young people in aviation. This whole You Can Fly initiative, which we started about 5 years ago from the foundation's perspective, and getting donors that now have put over $20 million to create 9 through 12 curriculum together. So we have 450 classrooms, 9,000 kids around the country taking these STEM education in aviation programs, all provided by donors to the foundation. And it's been really fun to see that grow and grow and grow. And now the U.S. government's going to get involved and help more schools have access to that.
Is it something that personal privates like myself could help get involved in?
Right. So most of the schools that, you know, parents or you've got kids or friends that have kids in these schools don't know that there is an aviation program free. And this teacher has to be taught about aviation. Many times what we ask private pilots in the neighborhood, invite them out to the airport, show them what the experience is like, get them around the airplanes and bring the kids out if it makes sense. So all of us as aviators and people that go to the airport, bring somebody from the school with you.
Yeah. I mean, not to name drop any other organizations, but I am a Young Eagles pilot, and I do specialize in discovery flights. Is there something similar that AOPA can brand, these pilots, these discovery flight pilots? So I could walk up and say, I'm an AOPA, you can fly pilot. I'd like to do a discovery flight with you or something.
Something along those lines. We work very closely with the AA and the team over there about getting that inspiration going, which is the Young Eagle flights, which I've done lots of myself. And it's really about getting that next step, which is the perspiration, how do I have to learn how to fly? And that's what we want to do, is get people excited about the next steps in whether they want to be a controller or a pilot themselves or a mechanic or a technician or an engineer. There's so many great careers in aviation. So one of the things we ask our fellow pilots to do is, what do you want to do when you grow up? Most people say, I want to be a pilot, right?
Right.
Actually, interesting enough, the surveys are still very high that young people want to fly. Now, maybe in space, by the way.
Well, why wouldn't they? I mean, flying is the coolest thing ever.
Darn right it is. So that's what we want to do, is have our members inspire them, get them out to the airport.
Awesome.
All right, the question at the top of the show was, is it worth it? Is membership in AOPA worth it? Which you, of course, say yes, and we expect that. But so let me ask the serious question for that person wondering, why? Why is it worth it?
So it is a really good question, and we want to make sure the value is there for your membership. We have some very unique things. The advocacy that AOPA has been doing for nearly 80 years now on the Hill and getting laws passed, like Basic Med. We've got over 60,000 people flying under an alternative way to comply with your medical procedure. Wouldn't have happened without that advocacy and the membership to drive that. We have a lot of voters. Then the congressmen and women listen to us because we have those voters in those neighborhoods. So we're actually able to get laws changed, which is really hard to do, by the way, for anybody else. And that's why the size of our organization really matters. But even beyond that, we have the coolest magazine in aviation, and it's the most widely read. Over 75 countries around the world that actually subscribe to our magazine that are part of an international AOPA. So those are really important components about it. But having that voice at even a state, local, airport level that can help bring education about why the neighborhood should support the airport is really important. And this organization has been doing that for 80 years successfully.
I will say this, that when we did an episode a year ago about what aviation's like, general aviation's like around the world, it opened my eyes to how good we have it here in the U.S. I wasn't aware of that. So are you and AOPA, are you working on that? Is it a fight you have to do to keep us from going the way the rest of the world is going? Because GA, we don't pay the kind of fees that Europe pays and the fuel prices that they pay. And it's really clamped down on GA. Is it a fight that you guys are fighting?
It is. It's a fight, and it's the reason why this organization has been around and successful in pulling the pilot community together to have a voice. And again, at the state level or at the national level. And in many cases, we sit on a couple committees in the international level to help guide what aviation rules should be like for general aviation. Because as you know and spoke about, many of these countries around the world, rather, take a view that every airplane's the same, a 747 or a Piper Cub, and they have to comply with the same regulations because they just don't have a thinking about general aviation nor an advocacy group like AOPA. So it really matters, and we get involved in all those things. And why we have 5,000 public use airports in this country is because of AOPA.
It's amazing. How has GA fared in the face of this pandemic situation?
Boy, if you'd asked me that question a year ago right now, when this pandemic was kind of kicking off, it was spooky for everybody. And certainly those that are affected in the airline world and the travel world, which are cousins, if you will, have been kind of negatively affected. General aviation, by the way, is best described as anything that's not a scheduled aircraft carrier, or airline, or a military flight. It's everything else, and it's booming. GA got involved in moving medical professionals around and PPE equipment all over the place. But people are taking the time that they have, not going to the office, and taking the money that they have and buying airplanes and going up. Some days we measure with the FAA. We're up 30 and 40% over last year at airports that we can measure general aviation activity for the last 9 months.
You were talking about the state and local level too, because I was talking about federal on advocacy and how bad Europe is. The local level, I've read things like there was that Wyoming FBO charging outrageous prices for avgas. What is AOPA doing to keep that kind of situation in check? We've got all the 5,000 general aviation airports out there. Many of them just have one FBO. What's being done there?
Well, it's one of the longer term fights, and the idea that the public taxpayer bought and purchased these airports, and public access is guaranteed. Now, one of the challenges we've had in certain cases, those leases that the FBOs have, and by the way, 90% of the FBOs do a really nice job.
Yes, agreed.
And take care of us really well. There are a few bad actors that take advantage of their monopoly position, in my opinion, and we are putting a lot of pressure on them to say, hey, there's got to be a public ramp here that I can still go here and pay whatever the reasonable fee might be for public parking. I may not choose to buy any fuel here. And first, let's chart those, because one of the things that actually occurs in many cases is there's public parking, but nobody knows about it. It's not marked, it's not, signed in any such way. We've got agreement that we're going to have all those signs start to be added to the airport lists, so that we'll start plotting where you can have a choice to park. And then you'll make a choice whether the services that they're charging are worth it, or you take your business elsewhere.
So if the advocacy part of it makes it worth it, what are some of the other perks and benefits of being an AOPA pilot?
Education is whether it's a new technology that's available, new airspace and communication systems, whether it's ADS-B, other ways that we have to educate. And we spend a lot of time thinking about what do the pilots need, not just the advocacy and trying to get laws changed, but what they need to be safer and a better pilot. And if they can, what are the equipment that they can add to their airplane that makes it even more fun to fly?
I know that when I became an AOPA member while I was a student pilot, I'm a later in life pilot. I know I used the medical hotline to ask about some prescription drugs. I used it right away. I had legal questions when I was setting up the partnership to buy my 210, and because of that, I went ahead and bought the higher level legal protection, which was a good thing when I got called into the FSDO. So I know that I've used some of the other benefits as well.
We get thousands and thousands of calls a week at our call center. We actually have a person that picks up the phone, by the way, so we can do a chat if we need to, if people would prefer that. But we actually have lawyers on staff that can help you guide from an aircraft purchase, a hangar lease, or if you do happen to get crossways with the FAA and the regulator, we have assistance for that for a small extra fee in our membership. And it is used by a lot of our pilots. And it's an important way for us to protect the freedom to fly, but it's also a way to protect you from getting in trouble.
And I know that when I renewed my subscription to AOPA, I got the cool headset case. So there's always that.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, they do like hats and headset cases and just fun little things.
Well, maybe one day I'll qualify for that. So
Exactly.
maybe I could talk to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. You should give them a call.
You know anybody at AOPA?
I do. Yeah, exactly.
One thing that I've thought a lot about is, as I've looked at the aviation industry, we're really throttled by the regulations. There's so much new technology coming out, and we're not able to take advantage of it. We're still using the same engine designs that were designed 70 years ago because it takes so much red tape and everything else for the FAA to approve things, decades. So we're seeing a lot of growth in the experimental market, but what about general aviation? What's being done there as far as STCs and getting those approved faster?
Well, a number of years ago, I met with the administrator at the time, Michael Huerta, who was the FAA administrator, and he did a great job of running the FAA, and he was really interested in learning a lot more about GA. And he was really surprised to learn that the average age of a GA airplane is 45 years old. And yet people are building these experimentals, home-built airplanes, really good. And I can't even call them experimental, really, because they're just, got great products on them, they got autopilots on them, and the costs are, sometimes 1/10 of the certified world. And we presented with him the idea that, we've got perfectly good airplanes. We just need to update the technology. So went under a process of what they call a non-STC TSO to be able to add these things. So when we did the ADS-B, and that was first coming in, if you recall, it was almost $6,000 or $7,000 of the minimum cost. We worked with industry and the FAA, got the cost down to $1,700. So now you can have your ADS-B in and out for $1,700, which is a lot better deal than it was $6,000. So they are moving along that way, and they're calling it Mosaic. And they hope to have that rulemaking out probably in another year or two. And I'm pretty excited about what that can do for bringing more lower cost equipment to your aircraft that's safer, better, and actually already proven in thousands of amateur-built airplanes.
I mean, I know, like when looking at upgrading my Warrior, looking at the panel and stuff, I would love to be able to put in some of the fancier stuff to replace the six-pack, but I mean, it's the cost from going to the non-certified to the certified, it's like 3 times as much. It's crazy.
It's coming down a lot. If even from last year, it's come down probably 20, 30% because there's now competition. And both the good big guys, Garmin and Dynon, everybody's trying to join in. Avidyne, Aspen, everybody's got new products coming out.
Yeah.
Again, under this pretense that they can get these things installed in older airplanes.
I'm looking at you, Garmin.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're seeing eye level with the bomb and some of their products. We're seeing our sponsor, iFly GPS, come out and
Yes.
offer an alternative to an electronic flight bag that's good, and it doesn't have to be so expensive. So I like to see where that's going. For those that have now heard why to join AOPA, what do you think are some of the biggest objections, and how you overcome those objections to membership in AOPA?
So I think most of it, the objection is knowledge. And we've got to do a constantly better job of educating young people as they get into aviation how important it is to band together. We talk about millennials in different age groups about whether they join or not join and what do they think about politics and not politics. But the reality is there's 650,000 pilots in this country today, up from 580, by the way, just 4 or 5 years ago. The pilot population is growing again for the first time in 30 years. And, as they enter aviation, it's a different experience than it was, 20, 30 years ago, where there was a Cessna dealer and a Piper dealer and a Beech dealer all in the field, and they're all, trying to get your business. Today, we want to get them started flying. We want to get them to a flying club if it makes sense to have a lower cost experience, and then start thinking about aircraft ownership. But they've got to know that AOPA exists. And, we can't afford to go on CBS or NBC and tell them that we exist. We count on people like you to say, you're a member, right? Because we all have to hang together. And so that's our biggest thing, is getting the message out.
Absolutely. I like it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you better.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you. All right, you guys, so there you have it. I know for me personally, I am an AOPA member. I will tell you that on the advocacy alone, to me, that's worth it enough, let alone the other benefits that I use. I don't know about you.
Absolutely. I've been an AOP member since I was a student. I enjoyed that 6-month subscription to the Student Pilot magazine. It was very helpful at the time.
Yeah, so I use it, and talking to my pilot friends in Europe, we have it really good here, and it's because of organizations like AOPA fighting for us.
And we want to keep it good.
We want to keep it good, and that's the big thing. So that's the big challenge. So if you can support AOPA, I highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Same.
So, all right, you guys, like, subscribe, share if you can, and we'll see you guys next time.
In the hangar.